We've got a packed agenda for today, so we'll go ahead and get started. So for those that don't know me, my name is Karen. I am with CK Customs PA, does custom designs. We started with cat trees 5 years ago, and now we're into t-shirts and vinyl designing. I'm also an admin for Cricut Help Desk Unofficial on Facebook. We're starting a blog. We have an Etsy store. We're kind of all over the place at the moment. So if you ever have questions about any of that, please send me a message. You could send Cricut Help Desk a message. It'll all come through me or my husband or my friend, but we are all in constant communication. So that's who I am. So today's agenda is all about creating offsets and shadows. It's pretty much, I'm going to consider them one and the same, but doing it for cutting it on your Cricut. So some of them we may do outside of Cricut Design Space, but then we bring them into Design Space. We'll go through 5 different ways. But there are more than 5 different ways. Sure, there are many ways I don't know about, so something to keep in mind there. So if you have any questions, please ask as we go. So I'm going to go ahead and jump right to it. The first way I'm going to show you how to create an offset is using the multi-layer fonts in Cricut Design Space. So let's jump over to Design Space. Find where my mouse is. All right, here is my Design Space home, and I'm just going to go ahead and open a blank canvas. So to create an offset in Cricut Design Space using the multi-layer fonts, you'll first want to start out by putting some text on the screen. So I'm going to go with my good old CK Customs PA. Bring it higher for you, or for me maybe. And basically we're going to change the font. So I'm going to go to my fonts drop down. I'm going to use my filter over on the top right, and I'm going to select multi-layer. So these are actually already part of your Cricut Design Space, and these fonts, when you select them, have more than one layer to them. Now, I am not a subscriber of Cricut Access, and many of these are labeled as $4.99, part of Cricut Access. So I'm going to go ahead and click my filter again and do my fonts so that I make sure that I select one that's not going to charge me. So I'm going to pick the last one here, Cricut Craft Room Basics, but any of these would work, or any of the others would work if you have Cricut Access or want to pay the $4.99 to use those fonts. So on the screen here, it looks pretty much like a basic font. I'm going to make it smaller to fit so we can see it. Let's see. Change my width. All right. So I don't know if you've noticed, though, over on the right side, there are 2 layers. The second one is hidden. So I'm going to go ahead and unhide that second layer. And right there, you can see it showed up with kind of like a border behind it. If I actually hide the first layer, you'll see it's actually a solid second layer. So if you see that, we can change the color. So if I change the color of that background to kind of make it pop more for us. Well, it didn't pop too well, but it's there. So that is directly using Cricut Design Space. You can modify the spacing of them. Now to do so, you have to modify them as the group to get your sub menu with your fonts. If you only have one selected, there's no sub menu. So you have to choose the whole group. And you can change, the letter spacing, all of those different font edits that you're used to. You can ungroup them. You could even ungroup the individual letters to move them manually. I know sometimes we have to do that with fonts. If it was a script font, you could move them all close to each other so that you can weld it. Now, you have to be careful when welding these. You don't want to weld the two layers together. You want to weld probably just your back layer, to be honest. So, if I bring these together again as a group, and let's see, I might have lost because I ungrouped them, I lost my text editing menu. So let me hit back. We can get back to that. Okay, so let's bring them so that they're touching. I'm going to decrease my letter spacing. At least get some of them touching. All right, so we have good overlap in a lot of those. If I ungroup, well, thinking out loud here, I wonder if I even need to. Let's test it. Let me just weld the back layer. See if it'll let me do that. It didn't. It took all of it because it was grouped. So I'm going to hit undo. I'm going to ungroup. And I'm just going to weld the back layer. And now the front layer is still there. I just have to move it forward. That'll help when you're sending it to cut. Your back layer would be a solid piece wherever they're touching. So that's basically using the multi-layer fonts in Cricut Design Space. Next, I'm going to show you how to use two-part fonts from DaFont.com. So if we go to DaFont.com, unfortunately, there's no filter to find two-part fonts, but they're similar to the multi-layer fonts where you're going to get two files, sometimes more, and be able to install those and use them both. So one I know of, and I'm gonna go to that one first to show you how they look, and then we'll try to search for another, is Ginchiest. And now, at first glance, it just looks like a regular font that you would see in here in DaFont. I know we have a whole class on playing with fonts, including a big section on DaFont. So I'm not going to go into a ton of detail on installing fonts. We did that in the font class. We can put a link to that in the description for this being posted on YouTube. So what you'll notice, though, that we didn't point out before, is on the far right, it says 2 font files right above the download button. So there is 2 fonts that you get when you download this. And I'm going to click on it. And it actually now shows me that there's the first font that we saw and the second one with the shadow. So if you download it and then open your download, you will see you'll get 2 files. You'll install them both. Now these are already installed on my computer, but as you know, you can open them individually to click install. You can unzip it and right click to install. Again, that is all in the font class. But these are installed on my computer. So if I come back to Cricut Design Space, I can write some text. And I can find that font. Okay, I didn't install it. I did just switch computers. I thought I installed all my fonts, but that's okay. We'll go ahead and install them. Doesn't take us long. See, it is there. Maybe I spelled it wrong. It is not showing up in my design space. I have used this font before I switched computers. So basically, I'll just kind of explain and walk you through is you switch your font to the downloaded and installed font, and then you can write your text a second time, or you can just duplicate the first one and switch it to the shadow version, and then you can layer those on top of each other. Now, other fonts in here, again, they don't have a good search filter for them. So if you don't know the name of one, you can try some keywords like shadow, because these are often considered shadow effects. And then when you're trying to decide, if they work, if they don't, you can look at how many font files you're going to get with the download. Now the shadow one is a single file, but you could bring that into Design Space and change the color of the inside with contour. We have a class where we do Cricut Basics or Cricut Design Space Basics, and I show you how to contour those letters. There are others. This one has 4 font files. Let's take a look at what that includes. So this one, that does say there's a shadow under it. If we go back, let's look at this KG shadow. So this one, you could fill in the second one here to be your back layer and use the front layer to have a shadow effect of an offset. So any font that you find actually that is looking hollow in the center, you could duplicate and contour to show the opposite and put those layers on top of each other as well. All right, let's move on. I'm going to show you how to create an offset directly in Cricut Design Space. Let me delete these, get those out of the way. So Cricut Design Space used to have another workaround for creating these shadow offsets that involved turning your text into draw and saving and printing and all of these steps. And unfortunately for some, fortunately for me, it's no longer an option. Now, why I say fortunately for me is I like the new way better. The new way that people have found to create offsets in Cricut Design Space. I like it. So I'm going to start with some text again. Let's do my name this time. And let's find some type of script type font. I'm going to click System. Oh, you know what? That's why it didn't find the other font. So let's roll back. Let's roll back to DaFont and let's show. I still had those filters on was the problem, guys. Here are those fonts. So there's the first one from DaFont. And then let's duplicate it. Let's change the second one to the shadow version. Now, of course, before doing all of this, I would have liked to move them together and do any welding and spacing. Let's change the color. And then let's bring this one to front. Send to front. Highlight them both. Go to Align and Center. It's going to put them right on top of each other. Now, because I didn't play with the spacing first and bring them together, it's not all aligned. But you can see where, you know, that K would have had its shadow, just lining it up where you need to line it up. So those 2 layer fonts, that's why I didn't show up, is I had my filters on. Sorry, guys. All right. Moving back to creating an offset in Cricut Design Space. So let's add some text. And let's change it to some type of regular script looking text. I'm going to use one of the ones on my system. Now look how this one looks. Okay. So let me make it larger. And the first thing you want to do is bring it together to look how you're going to want it to look. So if you're going to want them to touch, go ahead and do those steps now. And I'm going to ungroup and just do some little tweaking here. All right, that looks pretty good. I might bring this up on the A. Down here. Sorry. Okay. So after you get them looking the way you would like them to look, go ahead and select all of it and weld. Okay, that weld step is important. And then you need to duplicate it several times. So I'm just click and duplicate above my layers. And we're probably going to end up even using a few more, but I'm going to move some down so I have one up top. And basically what you do is you start to layer them on top of each other, just a hair off from each other. You're basically going to make it thicker. It's pretty much what you're doing. So you can take one up there. You can go in all different directions. So the first one I went left. This one I went right a little bit. This one I'm going to go a hair up to the left. I'm going to go a hair up to the right. Now this is a workaround. It's not going to be perfect. Oftentimes they're referred to as looking like brush strokes because you may get some uneven edges. So let's start and see how this one looks. So once you think your thickness may be there, always make sure you leave one aside. Weld that group together. And then I'm going to bring, this is my top layer, so I need to make sure I bring to front, send to front. I'm going to change its color so that we'll be able to see it when we stack them. And I'm just going to select both and align, center, and see how they look. That's kind of the basic offset shadow that a lot of people are looking for. Now some people like them a lot thicker, so no problem. You say, oh, it's not quite there for me. You can pull that back off. You can, again, continue to duplicate. And you can continue to work on your back layer. Doesn't matter what color it is. Once we weld, they'll all join back together. So I do kind of like this way of creating offsets. I think it's kind of fun. Like I said, it's not the most... if you're very detail-oriented and worried about like these edges around the N or the top of the K, it may not be the method you choose to use. Let's see how many more of these I have done here. Bring these up. But I do think they serve a good purpose, and I like them. So, you know, if you really like your background to be real tight, you could bring the letters closer or pick a different font. All right, let's weld this batch and see what we look like. And again, I'm going to need to bring this one to front. And then select both, align, center. So we've gotten it thicker. And you can continue to go with this as many times as you'd like. It's up to you. Always, you know, these are personal preference. But that's how you can create an offset or a shadow in Cricut Design Space. So next I'm going to show you, let me delete this so we'll have a clean canvas. Open up our next program. Right. Now I'm going to show you how to create an offset using Inkscape. Inkscape is a free program that you can download from the internet, and it really creates nice offsets. But there are many steps, so feel free to take notes or watch this video again afterward to really get those steps down. There's a lot of little detailed steps when using Inkscape, but they look very nice. Let me see if I can pick the font first. It seems to like that idea. So I'm going to use the same font we did in the last example, which was A Gentle Touch. And I wrote hello, and it's very tiny, so yes, we're going to zoom in again. As soon as I can get to that part of the screen. Okay, so we have our text in A Gentle Touch is the font I selected. And you now need to go to the Select tool. So I'm still, if you can see on my mouse cursor, there's still a little A. It still wants to write more fonts. So on the top left, I'm going to click the arrow, and then we're back on a Select tool, and you can see these changed around the outside edge. So let's go ahead and drag it bigger for our own sanity. And now that you have the Select tool with the arrows, and this is where it gets a little bit of, I don't know, kind of regimented. You have to go through many steps here. So with it selected, you go to Path, select Object to Path. Then go to the Object menu, and you're going to ungroup. You're going to go back to Path, and you're going to choose Union. Union is very similar to weld in Cricut Design Space. You're going to go back to Path, and you're going to go to Linked Offset. Now, before you try to adjust your offset, over on, and I need to adjust my screen so you can see it. Let's see. Over on the far right is this, it's Enable Snapping, and it's dark gray. You need to select it to turn it off. All right, so again, that was Enable Snapping, and select it because it'll be automatically on. You want that off. So it is no longer on. And there is, if you kind of hover, I don't know if you can see, it's kind of changing colors of hair. There's a small diamond that's going to appear somewhere around your border. Mine is above the H here. I've seen it in other places. So look for the tiny diamond, click on it, and drag outward a little bit away from your word. You can see it's getting larger. Now, I'm going to change my font color to bright pink. So it's actually your offset that you're creating. You can make it as large or as thin as you would like. Now I'm going to do it right about here. And I know there are gaps in the middle of the H and the O, and we're going to address those. Okay, so we've got the offset behind our hello. But if you have holes, like I have, you need to go to Path, Object to Path, and now you can see these little dots all around and including where you see those holes. They're called nodes. So we need to use our Node Select tool, which is over on the left, and you can click and drag over the nodes that we need to remove. So I am in the center of the H here, if you can see my cursor. I've drug over those nodes, and I'm going to hit backspace on my keyboard, and those ones in the H went away. Now, it looks like there are nodes between the E's and the L's, so I'm going to get rid of those as well. I don't want any extra cuts, so nodes create cuts. So I'm going to delete all of those nodes. And then that gap in the center of the O, we do the same thing. Drag over the nodes to select them, backspace to remove them. I'm going to go back to the Select tool, so I'm not going to be using the nodes now. And I'm going to do File, Save As. Now it's already going to default to saving it as an SVG. So we can call this Hello. I'm going to put it on my desktop so we can easily find it. I'm going to go to Cricut Design Space, Upload, Upload Image, Browse. We will jump to my desktop. Looks like I'm already on my desktop. And I'm going to look for that hello.svg we just created. Open. Brings it as a nice SVG. Save. Insert, and I know I'm going quickly through these steps. We have a video on uploading images and SVGs, so check that out if you need to. I'm going to drag and make this guy bigger so you can see it, but if you look at the layers, it brought in the 2 layers with the offset. You could hide it if you don't want it. You could change its colors just like you would manipulate any SVG. So again, that's creating an offset with Inkscape. Inkscape is a free program that you can download. Okay. All right. Let me see here. I think one more method. All right. So the last method I'm going to show you. Let's clear our canvas again. All right. The last method I'm going to show you is using Silhouette Studio. Now, the caveat to this method is you need to have the business edition, which is a paid version of Silhouette Studio. I do not have a Silhouette machine. but I did pay for the business edition of Silhouette Studio for the sheer purpose of creating SVGs. So I do find the offset in Silhouette Studio is very easy to create, and it was well worth buying the business edition for my purposes. So if you have Silhouette Studio Business Edition and you want to create an offset for your Cricut, you start out by, on the left, clicking the A to put some text onto your screen. And I'm going to go ahead and fill in a color for that text as well. To select it. There we go. Fill in that. Alright, so it's really pretty quick and simple in here. They have an offset tool. It's over on the right side. It is what is the star inside of another star. You click on it, you select offset, and you use this distance guide to decide on your thickness for that offset. You can see it adjust as it goes. But basically you create your offset like that and click apply. What the business edition allows is to save as SVG, which then allows us to bring it into the Cricut design space. So file, save as. Again, I will throw this onto my desktop. I will switch the file type to SVG and call it CKC offset. And then back into Cricut Design Space, I would upload it like uploading any other SVG. Insert it into my canvas. And then you can change the colors as you would like. So it looks like this one I first selected is the front. Let's make the front purple. You have your back. Now, the pieces that are touching are already welded into individual parts, so the only spaces in separate layer items are where I have spaces in it. But you could always attach those. You'd have to ungroup first. But you could attach those so that when you cut it, they stay in the same place on your canvas. Let's send it back. All right, hopefully you learned a new technique for creating an offset to use with your Cricut. If you enjoyed this and learned something new, please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Happy crafting!